Day 26 in the Karen Reed case is in the books, and the testimony that the jury heard on this day was very compelling. You're not going to want to miss. I'm going to recap all of it for you right after this introduction. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. I'm your host, Rebecca, and I recap live trials, currently covering the case of Karen Reed. Also, Lori Valadabel, who is supposed to show up in court today. We're going to see if that's going to happen. Anyway, Karen Reed, day 26 of this murder trial. She's on trial for the murder of her then boyfriend, John O'Keefe, a Boston police officer. And this has an entire country completely divided in half. You thought the presidency was contentious? This is really contentious. Half the population believe that this is a police conspiracy cover-up to protect the owners of that house where his body was found, where this house party was going on, where there were a multitude of other police officers from various agencies in this house. Or was it the other half that believe that Karen Reed backed her vehicle up and ran him over, hit him? He fell into the snow, hit his head. Well, it wasn't, anyway, it wasn't really snowing very hard at the time that he would have fallen, but fallen, hit his head, suffered a fatal brain injury and hypothermia, because after that, the blizzard came. Anyway, day 26. The defense is putting on their case in chief, and I gotta tell you, wow, these witnesses are so good, so good. The first was Marie Russell. Now, she started her testimony on day 25, but I wanted to bring you the entirety of what she had to say, and I sometimes I'll blend it together with the cross, just so you get the entire opinion. But this is the most interesting woman. She's got to be about my age. I'd love to can I have coffee with you? I just want to have a cup of coffee with you and just talk about our lives. She started out as a Boston, well, not a Boston police officer, but she started out as a police officer in Massachusetts, not in Boston, in another town. But she did that for 7 years while she went to college. Yeah, hearken what I did. Yeah, went to college as a nurse and became an attorney. She was going to college as a cop and became a doctor. How cool is that? So she worked full-time as a police officer for 7 years. So she then goes into emergency medicine, and she's practicing emergency medicine. She goes through the internship, the residency, the whole thing. And they really stretched out the part where she talks about her credentials. She was on the stand for a good long time. So she then gets a fellowship, which is like you want an additional specialty. She gets a fellowship in forensic pathology. So now is she not only familiar with emergency medicine, she's also an expert in forensic pathology, the people that perform the autopsies. So she was working at she's not in Massachusetts anymore. She was working at a hospital in Los Angeles, California, that they called General Hospital. And I'm thinking, is that where the soap opera came from? It was called General Hospital. Now it's called something else now, Los Angeles General or something. It's owned by a private company by another name, but a lot of people still call it General Hospital. Anyway, she was working there, and she had several different titles while she worked there. She's been practicing emergency medicine and forensic pathology for over 30 years. So within this hospital, General Hospital, they have a standalone emergency room, clinic, and inpatient facility for people that are in custody, whether that's we just arrested you and we haven't even charged you yet, or it could be somebody that's sitting in jail. Think about Lori Vallow. Why isn't she getting somewhere to a clinic? Or whether it's someone that's in prison. They can come and they can get treatment here. So oftentimes she saw, because it's at one point in time in her career, she was the director of this unit. And she's seen many, many dog bites, canine bites. Now, she distinguished there are canine bites and there are domestic. She called them civilian bites. Domestic, pets that will bite. She goes, those are usually not too severe. But when you see these canine bites, the dogs that are trained to bite, they're trained to bite and not let go. And you see some pretty severe injuries in those cases. So she's seen a lot of dog bites in her career. Now, as a medical examiner, over 500 autopsies, she has seen a lot of motor vehicle collision injuries. So she's familiar with really a lot. Then she, in addition to just some more of her roles while she was at this general hospital, at one point she was on the quality improvement committee. I'm very familiar with quality improvement. This is where cases where there's suspected physician foul play, if you will, or something's not right in Denmark kind of cases. They would come before the quality improvement committee, and the physician would have to answer questions about the case. In any case, she was on this committee, so she was responsible for a lot of death investigations. I did quality improvement as a risk manager. I've done everything. I was a nurse, risk manager, quality, lawyer. I was a lawyer for 15 years. So in any case, as a risk manager, I would sit in on a lot of this quality improvement stuff. So if there was an unusual death, a death that was not expected, like, or somebody would come into the ER and die within 24 hours, or there were some times when I could not get a doctor to sign off on a death certificate. I don't know how she died. Nobody would sign off on the death certificate. Nobody wanted to do an autopsy. I'm like, guys, we got to come to some kind of an agreement. What was it called? We got to put something down here on this piece of paper. So the Quality Improvement Committee would do these death investigations. So she was familiar with a lot of these death investigations as well. So bottom line, she's really qualified to give the opinions that she's going to give. Now, she has published, she has a special interest in wound pattern identification. And she has published on wound pattern identification. So she did a couple of articles that have been peer reviewed where she co-authored one describing law enforcement canine bites and dog bites, and then one describing how you should manage these canine dog bites by law enforcement, because she was very much in disagreement with the way they are usually managed. Usually they just give these people that are in custody some antibiotics and send them off on their way. She goes, no, these people need to be hospitalized. They need to have IV antibiotics. Sometimes they even need to have surgery. There's a completely different way you need to manage those kind of bites. So she is recognized as an expert in wound pattern recognition. So she was, one of the things that came up was when a dog bites, are you going to, like, here's what I'm understanding, or one of the questions that comes up in this case. You've got this pattern, well, it's probably on the other arm, right arm, this pattern of bites, what she's describing as dog bites. And they're going, down. They're linear. And but why aren't you seeing them, like, if you're going to bite, wouldn't it be like the jaw like that? Do you see what I'm saying? Where's this damage here? Where's that damage? And she says that oftentimes you won't see that. You may just see the upper jaw, which I thought that was interesting, very interesting. So she said it's usually just the front canines on the upper that will get into the arm. So then the jury was shown a picture of John O'Keefe's arm, the way I just described it, and her ultimate opinion was that the wounds that are inflicted on this man's arm were as a result of a dog attack. She described that there are different clusters, and she was asked to go through it all. And she said there's multiple groupings, in other words, patterns by teeth and claws of a dog. And so obvious to her that it was a dog bite that she did consider other things, but she kind of quickly dismissed these other things. She said, could it have been a collision? She says these wounds were not consistent with a collision. They were not consistent with taillight pieces. It was consistent with a dog bite. So she said there was no medical evidence of an impact. She goes, there was no medical evidence in this case of an impact. You would have expected to see multiple injuries from the neck down. If he was hit here and up to the taillights is in his skin, making those marks, you would have seen bruising, you would have seen fractures of the elbow, maybe the ulnar, the ulnar bone that runs here. You don't see any of that. There's nothing from the neck down, lower extremities, which you will see most often in, these collisions between a vehicle and a pedestrian. No signs of any of that in this case. So under cross-examination, Attorney Brennan, he gets into, you weren't supposed to, there's this sequestration order. And that means that you want, especially an expert, once you start testifying, you're not allowed to talk to any other witnesses in this case as an expert. As an expert, you can listen to what the other experts have to say in this case. But in this case, the plaintiff didn't put on any dog bite evidence. They had a forensic pathologist, Dr. Welch. I think his name was Walsh, who his opinion was that he checked for DNA from the shirt and there was no dog DNA on this shirt. But they chose not to put him on the stand. So there's been no evidence of DNA for this case. But anyway, apparently sometime during this case, Brennan has been showing or quoting from transcripts and not quoting correctly, or talking about something in a transcript that's not in the transcript. So on the ride to and from the hotel, this expert was riding with the defense attorneys. I guess they're staying at the same hotel. None of these people are from this area. They're all from out of town. The plaintiff attorney, none of them are here. They're all staying in hotels. So she rode with the defense people to and from court. Well, what did you discuss? Well, the only thing anywhere close to being relevant to this case was she was just told that if he asked you about something in a transcript, ask to see this transcript. Well, what else did you talk about? Well, we talked about Boston and when I used to live here. And he's like, no, what about this case? Nothing about this case. But he just kept going and going and going. Well, are you sure? Is there something wrong with your memory? When he said that, she gasped. Listen to this. It's right here.
Be a violation.
So did you meet with Attorney Alessi last night?
No.
How was it that you had a conversation with him?
Actually, it might have been in the vehicle.
You drove together?
Yes.
So did you commute to and from court together with Attorney Alessi?
Well, there's a driver.
Okay, who else is in the car when you left court yesterday?
The driver. No, I wasn't with him yesterday, no. Not in the car yesterday, no.
Well, you just said that you spoke to Attorney Alessi yesterday. And I'm trying to figure out, when was it that you were having conversations with Mr. Alessi relative to this sequestration order that you're under?
This morning, riding to court.
Okay, so you and Attorney Alessi drove to court?
With the limo driver, yes.
Well, who was in the limo with you and Attorney Leslie on the way to court today?
That was just us.
Just you two?
Yeah.
What else did you both talk about other than that you should ask for a transcript every time I ask you a question?
That's what we talked about specific to this case.
Was it a long conversation?
No, not at all.
The entire ride here, there must be more you spoke about other than just a sequestration order.
We did. We spoke about Boston, how I love Boston area. We spoke about New York. We spoke about other things. And in fact, I have to say that even on the ride back to the hotel yesterday, with others in the car, nobody spoke about the case.
But I'm talking about this morning when you did speak about the case. What else? Not about the Red Sox or the weather. What else did you talk to Attorney Alessi about this morning other than you should ask for a transcript every time I ask you a question?
We talked about what I did last night.
About this case?
No.
I'm sorry, but I'm asking about this case.
That was it.
I want to know what all the discussions were between you and this attorney today or last night about this case.
Just that I should ask for a transcript.
Well, there must have been some concept. There must have been some context. He didn't just turn to you talking about the weather and say, hey, you should ask for a transcript. You must have been talking about something.
He also generally, not today, but generally says, be honest. Always be honest.
Fantastic. But this morning about your testimony, what did he tell you? Did he tell you this morning you should be honest?
Not this morning.
Okay. Does anybody need to remind you to be honest when you testify?
No.
Okay. What else did he tell? How did it come up? Hey, by the way, ask for transcripts.
I don't even know how it came up. I didn't put much significance to it.
Well, it was just moments ago it happened because you just got to court. You can't remember the context of the sage advice of Attorney Alessi?
No.
Do you have any memory issues?
No.
May I approach?
Yes.
Transcript.
She was stunned that he would go that low. Like, it was, she gave him a look like, are you serious? Like, you really going to ask me that? She was so good. She held up so well on cross-examination. She really, really did. He made very few inroads with her, but he did ask her at one point, were you aware that the DNA collected did not show any DNA from a dog? And she said she wasn't aware of that. So of course, there were objections. The jury was sent out. The defense filed a motion for mistrial with prejudice. In other words, just throw the case out. Just throw it out. We can't recover from this. So by the fact that they didn't call anybody in their case in chief, the prosecution, they didn't put into evidence this DNA test. They shouldn't be able to ask questions about evidence about stuff that's not in evidence. And there was argument about it both ways, and the judge ruled in favor of the prosecution. This is a huge error. Huge error. This is so appealable at this point. Like, they've got a huge appeal for this. I don't think this judge made the right decision. Like, you should not let in questioning about stuff that is not in evidence. She did. So this doctor said, yeah, I was aware of that, but, there's reasons that I just kind of discounted it. First of all, they don't swab this sweatshirt or whatever that the dog bit into for over a year and a half. And that time it was on him. It was in the snow. It was on the floor of the ER. It was in Michael Proctor's custody for God knows how long. She goes, it would have made a difference to me if it had been a proper police investigation and collected right away. Well, what about the fact that nobody even suspected there might be a dog bite for an year and a half? She goes, a proper police investigation would have suspected everything. You would have ruled out everything. You would have swabbed it just because you would swab it. You've got all these wounds. You swab the wounds. Nobody did that. So she has pointed out, if you'd have done a proper police investigation, that would have been different. You didn't do that. So, what else? Oh, another thing she pointed out, and I thought this was really interesting. She said one of the other reasons she discounted the fact that it was a collision is that the debris field in a collision is usually near the collision, not 7 feet away in the grass. I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting. They didn't find pieces of taillight from the road all the way to we don't know where they found the pieces of taillight, at the scene is what we've been told, because they didn't photograph anything. They just found them at the scene. And wait to hear this next witness. You're going to understand completely why. So then she was asked about, had she seen any of the video clips or the documentaries and she said, yeah, I've seen those. And she says, and then the fact that, at the scene, she says, I did it. She goes, she had a complete medical explanation for what Karen Reed was experiencing at that scene. She says, this is a very stressful event. And she was having an acute grief reaction. She goes, this doesn't surprise me at all. And he goes, well, what about, 2 years later during a documentary, is she still going to have the same reaction? She goes, I don't know anything about that. So, he kind of got her there. Like, you still wouldn't be acting the same way. But initially, when she's like, I did it, she's running around the scene, she's all frantic. She goes, that's an acute stress reaction. So, okay. Anything that I missed? She was asked about, were you aware that shirt was scraped and there were microscopic pieces of the taillight in that shirt? And she's like, yeah, but those would not have caused the pattern of injury that we're seeing. Yeah. Any case, that's it. Okay. Next witness, Nicholas Barnes. Oh my gosh, you guys, he was so good. And he was on and off stand. He is a Dighton police officer. He's been there for, I think he said 12 years, and I could be wrong about that. He's been there a while. He's now a sergeant, and he's in road patrol. At the time, January 29th, 2022, he was working that day as a road patrol officer, and he gets a call from the Massachusetts State Police, Michael Proctor, saying, we're going to be in your area, there's a courtesy call. We're coming into your jurisdiction to retrieve a vehicle that's been involved in a homicide. Okay. So that was about 2:30 in the afternoon. He gets this call, and they ask him, would you accompany us? And this is normal routine. If someone else is going to be in your jurisdiction, they usually ask you to come with them. And so there's a report on file. So he gets a call later on from Proctor that they're in the area. He meets them at the home of the Reeds, which is Karen Reed's parents. At 3:27, he is at the residence. He sees a black SUV Lexus in the driveway. So at this point, Proctor and what is his name? We heard from him on the stand, the guy that was with him the whole time. They go in to interview, or they go in to talk to the Reeds. And while they're in the house, which he said they were in there for a very long time, while they're in the house, he's standing in the garage talking to Karen Reed's mom. And he observes the vehicle, the black Lexus SUV. And for more than a glance, I walked around this vehicle. Here's what he had to say. Listen to this.
That sort of answers my next question. Did you see whether or not Trooper Proctor and Sergeant Buchanan actually did go inside the residence?
Yes, they did.
For the bulk of the time that they were in the residence, where were you?
Outside the residence.
Were you with the black SUV?
I was in the garage speaking to the defendant's mother.
The defendant's mom?
Yes.
Janet? Okay.
Yes.
Where was the SUV at this point?
In the driveway.
Did you have an opportunity to see the SUV?
I did.
Did you walk all the way around it?
Not all the way around.
Did you see the rear end of it?
I did.
Did you make note of the rear end of it?
Yes. How
long would you say you were at the location in a position to observe the rear end of that SUV? 2 minutes, 20 minutes, something in between? Longer?
I would say not the entire time that I was there, but a good amount of time.
More than a glance?
Yes.
This is the afternoon of January 29th, 2022, correct?
Correct.
Before the vehicle had been seized formally by Trooper Proctor and Sergeant Buchanan, correct?
Correct.
Did you observe anything of note about the rear end of that black SUV?
Yes, I noted in a report that there was damage to the taillight.
Can you describe for the juror, by the way, which taillight are we talking about?
The right rear taillight.
Can you describe for the jurors what you noted in terms of the damage to the right rear taillight?
I noted that the report said that there was right rear damage to that taillight.
When you say damage, have you ever described that damage previously?
I have.
Can you tell us what that description is?
There was, it was damaged, the taillight was damaged, but there was a crack missing, but it was not completely damaged.
When you say there was a crack, do you mean there was a piece missing?
A piece was missing.
Can you describe for the jurors kind of what that piece looked like, how big it was, how small, the shape, as you would call it?
The piece was about maybe this big.
Is that maybe the size of a dollar bill, maybe 6 inches?
6 inches.
And
or so.
how wide?
Maybe that wide, maybe 3 inches, 2 inches, somewhere
Okay.
in there.
I want to show you a photo. Your Honor, with the court's permission, I would like to show Exhibit 13. It's been previously marked. Do you see what's depicted in this photograph?
I do.
What does that appear to be, just generally?
The right rear taillight.
Of what?
The Lexus SUV.
Is that consistent with the black Lexus SUV that you saw at the Reed residence?
That was the black Lexus. That was not the taillight the day I was there.
Can you do me a favor, Mr. Wolk? With the court's permission, could we zoom in on the right rear taillight, please?
Okay.
Do you see the condition of that taillight as it's depicted in this photo?
I do.
Sergeant Barros, is this the condition of the right rear taillight when you showed up at the Reed household at around 3:15 in the afternoon on January 29th, 2022?
Absolutely not.
What's different about this photo, sir?
That taillight is completely smashed out.
Does it appear that there are additional pieces of taillight?
My jaw hit the floor. Like, what? Now, keep in mind, I did not watch the first trial. He did testify at the first trial. But the damage he saw was not the damage that they're showing to the jury. What? That taillight was not damaged to the extent that it was later on after it gets towed away and taken to the Canton Police Department, Sallyport, where we had the last witness talking about Brian Higgins and Captain Berkowitz in the Sallyport with that vehicle. It's all kind of coming together, isn't it? I tell you, before I heard this guy's testimony, I was like, is this just a really good theory that they're running with, that they're getting some ground on? I don't really know one way or the other. I didn't have any really strong feelings one way or the other about her guilt or innocence at this point. But after hearing that, I'm like, what? Okay, there is a reasonable doubt in my mind now. If there wasn't before, it's there now, and I couldn't possibly convict this woman. No. Clearly some evidence tampering going on here. Yeah. All right, guys, that's the testimony for the 26th. We are all caught up, and I will see you in the next video. Hey, and if you wouldn't mind, could you hit that thumbs up and consider subscribing? I'd love to have you as a subscriber on the channel, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.